For 7 straight years, they lived by one rule: discipline over desire. Every morning looked exactly the same. Chicken breast, broccoli, rice, the next day chicken breast, broccoli, rice, and the day after that, chicken breast, broccoli, rice. For most people, that menu would become unbearable after a week. For Japanese pair skating champions Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara, it became a way of life. And then, something unexpected happened. The pair, who spent years carefully measuring every calorie, every gram of protein, and every ounce of body weight, suddenly appeared in a McDonald's commercial. At first glance, it seemed like just another sponsorship deal, but one comment from Kihara instantly captured the attention of fans across Japan. He laughed and said, "I've never eaten this many Big Macs in my life." People laughed, but many also felt something deeper. Because behind that simple sentence was a story that stretched across 7 years of sacrifice, a story most fans never saw. Why would a world-class athlete react so strongly to Big Mac? The answer takes us back to a quiet Canadian town called Oakville. Long before Olympic gold medals, before television commercials, and before becoming one of the most beloved pairs in figure skating, Miura and Kihara spent 7 years building their dream there. Oakville isn't glamorous. Located about an hour west of Toronto, it's a peaceful suburban community where life moves quietly. But inside a small apartment in that town, 2 athletes were preparing to become the best in the world. Their daily routine rarely changed. Wake up, eat, go to the rink, train, recover, sleep, repeat, day after day, month after month, year after year. Everything in their lives revolved around performance. Their meals were carefully designed by sports nutritionists. Protein, carbohydrates, fats, every ingredient served a purpose. Nothing was random. Nothing was left to chance. For Riku Miura, maintaining the ideal weight wasn't just about appearance. In pair skating, she needed a body capable of flying through the air during lifts and throws while maintaining speed, grace, and control. For Ryuichi Kihara, the challenge was equally demanding. He needed enough strength to lift, throw, and safely catch his partner while remaining quick and explosive on the ice. A few extra pounds could affect timing. A slight imbalance could impact the height of a lift, and in the worst-case scenario, it could lead to injury. That is why body management became a daily battle. One of the greatest sacrifices they made wasn't training harder than everyone else. It was giving up the freedom to eat whatever they wanted. People close to the pair have described their life in Oakville as incredibly disciplined. Most meals were cooked at home. Kihara became known for making curry in a pressure cooker. Miura was especially good at preparing fluffy omelette rice, but those favorite dishes were occasional treats. The reality of their everyday meals was far less exciting. Lean protein, vegetables, measured portions of carbohydrates, and when major competitions approached, the restrictions became even stricter. Eating out was rare. Indulging was almost impossible. Imagine living in a foreign country, preparing nearly identical meals every day, knowing that one small mistake could affect years of work. That kind of routine doesn't just challenge the body, it challenges the mind. And that's something many people outside the world of elite sports never fully understand. For athletes chasing Olympic dreams, discipline isn't something you turn on during competition. It's something you live every single day, every meal, every decision, every craving. For 7 years, Miura and Kihara chose the dream, and that's why one simple sentence about a Big Mac would eventually resonate with millions of people. Because when Kihara said, "I've never eaten this many Big Macs in my life," he wasn't really talking about hamburgers. He was talking about 7 years of sacrifice, 7 years of saying no, 7 years of putting a goal ahead of personal comfort. And somehow that made the joke both funny and emotional at the same time. No one officially planned it. No one sat down and said, "Let's make this our tradition." It simply happened. 1 year after the season ended, Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara stopped by McDonald together. The next year they did it again, and then again, and again. Before they even realized it, McDonald's had become their unofficial end-of-season ritual. Over time, that ritual developed its own unwritten rules. Big Mac was mandatory, the fries had to be large, and while they ate, they would talk about the season that had just ended. What went well, what went wrong, what needed to improve, what goals they wanted to chase next. The conversations were still about skating, but for once they weren't happening at the rink. There were no coaches nearby, no cameras, no judges, no score sheets. Just 2 athletes sitting across from each other with a tray of food, quietly reviewing another year of their lives. Looking back, those moments may have been their version of an annual closing ceremony, not on a podium, not at a press conference, but at a McDonald's table, reaching for fries and saying, "Well, another season is over." There was something beautifully ordinary about it, and yet, inside that ordinary moment lived the weight of 7 extraordinary years. According to people familiar with the pair, the tradition wasn't limited to season endings. It often happened after major international competitions as well: World Championships, Grand Prix finals, major events that demanded months of preparation. After returning from those competitions, sometimes even before leaving the airport, they would stop for McDonald's. And the remarkable thing was this: the result didn't matter. Whether they won or lost, the Big Mac was allowed. If they won, it tasted like celebration. If they lost, it softened the disappointment just enough to help them move forward. Either way, they sat at the same table and shared the same meal. Personally, I think that's one of the most powerful details in this entire story. The reward wasn't reserved for victory. They allowed themselves the same kindness after defeat. That's an incredibly mature mindset for elite athletes. Many competitors punish themselves after losses. They cut calories, they train harder, they sleep less. They convince themselves they haven't suffered enough. But Miura and Kihara seem to understand something important. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do after a setback is to forgive yourself. Maybe those Big Macs weren't acts of indulgence at all. Maybe they were acts of recovery, a quiet promise that tomorrow they would get up and fight again. And then came June 2026, the McDonald's commercial. For Miura and Kihara, this wasn't just another filming project. It was their first major commercial campaign after retirement. The production itself was ambitious, blending iconic anime scenes with live-action footage to create a nostalgic summer-themed story. But despite all the technical creativity, one moment stole the spotlight: a single sentence from Ryuichi Kihara. During filming, he casually laughed and said, "I've never eaten this many Big Macs in my life." The comment wasn't part of the commercial. It appeared in behind-the-scenes footage and interviews that made it feel genuine, unscripted. Almost as if viewers had accidentally overheard a private thought. You can imagine the reaction on set. The staff laughed, Miura laughed, the atmosphere instantly relaxed. It was one of those rare moments when everyone forgets the cameras are rolling. Then the footage was released, and the internet exploded. Fans immediately shared the clip across social media. News outlets picked up the quote. The phrase began appearing in headlines, but what fascinated people wasn't the commercial itself. It wasn't the production budget. It wasn't the technology. It was that unfinished sentence. Why did such a simple comment resonate so deeply? Because the pause inside that sentence allowed everyone to fill in the blanks. "I've never eaten this many Big Macs." In that moment, people imagined 7 years of restrictions, 7 years of discipline, 7 years of saying no. Maybe he wanted to say he never allowed himself to eat that many. Maybe he wanted to say he never thought he could. Maybe he wanted to say he spent years feeling guilty every time he did. Whatever the answer was, he never fully explained it. And somehow, that made it even more powerful. Sometimes the words we don't finish reveal more than the words we do. Fans seem to understand that immediately. Comments poured in. "This commercial is funny, but somehow it makes me emotional. It feels like 7 years of vegetables are packed into that one pause." I'm glad we live in a world where Riku and Ryuichi can finally enjoy a Big Mac without worrying about competition. Honestly, they seem more human after retirement, and that makes me appreciate them even more. Those comments captured something important. For years, fans watched highly disciplined athletes chasing perfection, but now they were seeing something different. They were seeing people. Because while athletes compete, every part of their lives becomes optimized. Meals are optimized. Schedules are optimized. Even emotions are often managed for performance. Retirement changes that. Retirement allows people to become ordinary again. And when Kihara paused in the middle of that sentence, smiling as he searched for the right words, we were witnessing that transformation in real time. Which brings us to something fascinating. The title of the commercial was "Back Then and Even Now Summer Means," and somehow that title perfectly summarizes this entire story. Back then, back in Oakville. Back when every morning started with the same meal. Back when every day revolved around training. Back when a Big Mac was a reward earned only a few times a year. Back when they sat together after another season and quietly said, "We made it through." And now they stand in front of cameras. Now they smile freely. Now they can enjoy the very food that once represented a rare moment of freedom. The small tradition that belonged only to 2 people in a Canadian apartment has become something shared by millions. And perhaps that's why McDonald's chose them for this campaign. Because a Big Mac isn't a luxury item. It's not exclusive. It's not rare. It's something ordinary. Yet under the right circumstances, ordinary things become unforgettable. The meal after a difficult exam. The food waiting for you after a long journey. The reward after months of hard work. Those moments transform something simple into something meaningful. For Miura and Kihara, the Big Mac became exactly that. A symbol of freedom, a symbol of survival, a symbol of another season completed. And that's why this commercial feels like more than an advertisement. It feels like the next chapter of their story. Their competitive careers may have ended, but their journey didn't. New dreams are already taking shape. New projects, new goals, new ways to inspire people. Somehow, the bridge between those two chapters wasn't built with medals or trophies. It was built with a Big Mac and a large order of fries. And honestly, that may be the most human part of this entire story. As I researched this story, one thought kept returning to my mind. What does it really mean to become the best in the world? Most people immediately think about medals, trophies, and records. But the truth is often much quieter. Becoming number one usually means giving something up. The freedom to eat whatever you want. The freedom to go wherever you want. The freedom to spend an ordinary evening without thinking about training, recovery, or competition. Little by little, those freedoms are traded away in pursuit of something greater. For Riku, Miura, and Ryuichi Kihara, one of those sacrifices was surprisingly simple: a Big Mac. On the surface, that sounds almost ridiculous. It's just a hamburger, nothing more. But when you choose discipline over desire every day for 7 years, even something as ordinary as a hamburger begins to carry meaning. And that's why that moment in the McDonald's commercial felt so powerful. When Kihara looked at the camera and struggled to finish the sentence, "I've never eaten this many Big Macs in my life." It wasn't really about food. It was about everything that food represented. 7 years of sacrifice, 7 years of self-control. 7 years of choosing the dream over immediate happiness. And finally, 7 years of freedom arriving all at once. In that brief pause, there was pride, there was relief, there was gratitude, there was the quiet satisfaction of knowing the journey had been worth it. I believe that's why so many people connected with those words, not because they were perfect, but because they were honest. Sometimes an unfinished sentence reveals more than the most carefully prepared speech ever could. And that brings me to another thought that stayed with me throughout this story: the freedom to sacrifice. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? Yet that's exactly what Miura and Kihara chose. Nobody forced them to avoid certain foods. No contract banned Big Macs. No rulebook demanded that level of restraint. They chose it themselves, every single day, because they believed in something bigger. And that's what makes their story so inspiring. Anyone can endure restrictions imposed by others. But choosing your own sacrifices for years at a time requires something entirely different. It requires conviction. It requires purpose. And perhaps most importantly, it requires faith that the goal waiting at the end is worth the cost. Still, even chosen sacrifices leave their mark. 7 years is a long time. Long enough for thousands of small decisions to accumulate. Every morning they chose discipline. Every evening they chose discipline. Every time they passed a restaurant. Every time they felt a craving. Every time they wanted something different. They made the same choice again and again. Don't eat it. Not today. Maybe after the season. Maybe next year. Just not today. When you think about it that way, it's easy to understand why Kihara's comment resonated so deeply. Aside that one sentence lived thousands of tiny victories nobody ever saw. No cameras recorded them. No judges scored them. No fans applauded them. Yet those moments were just as important as any performance on the ice. There is another part of this story that continues to stay with me. The tradition of eating a Big Mac after losses. Anyone can celebrate after winning. Success makes self-forgiveness easy. But defeat is different. Defeat whispers cruel things. You should have trained harder. You should have sacrificed more. You should have done better. On those nights, many athletes punished themselves, but Miura and Kihara did something different. They sat down together and shared the same meal anyway, whether they won or lost, whether they stood on the podium or fell short. The tradition remained unchanged. To me, that wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. It was a quiet reminder that their value as people wasn't determined by a single result. It was an acknowledgement that they had already given everything they had. And perhaps that's why they were able to endure for 7 years without breaking, because they knew when to push themselves, and they knew when to forgive themselves. Looking back now, I find myself thinking about the title of the commercial once more. Back then and even now, summer means I don't know exactly what McDonald's intended when they chose that title, but I hear something beautiful in those words. Back then, they were together. And now they're still together. Back then, they chased a dream from a small apartment in Oakville. And now they share their story with millions of people. Back then, they celebrated another completed season with a Big Mac and fries. And now they're smiling in front of cameras while doing the same thing. The circumstances changed. Their careers changed. Their lives changed. But one thing never did. The person sitting beside them. Maybe that's the real heart of this story. Not the food, not the commercial. Not even the medals, but the partnership, the friendship, the shared journey that lasted through victories, defeats, sacrifices, and dreams. When all is said and done, perhaps that is what made those 7 years truly special. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think about Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara's McDonald's tradition? Did Kihara's famous Big Mac comment make you smile, or did it make you emotional as well? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss future updates. Thank you for spending your time with us today, and until next time, we'll see you in the next story.